Hey guys, doing some reading in Judges today, and really it took several chapters before I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there. Don't ever get me wrong and think that there's not something in there that's worthy of you looking at. But there was something in particular that had really jumped out at me, and I've read this before. I've read through Judges many times, but um, there's a there's a guy in starts in Judges 10, goes through 11. His name is Jephthah, and he's a Gileadite. Says that he's a mighty man of valor, the son of a harlot, um, and basically what we have is his other brothers reject him because he's a half brother of this Gilead, and as a result of that, they don't want to really have anything to do with him because his mom is a harlot, and unlike their mom, so they kind of kick him to the curb and stuff until they get in trouble, and then once they get in trouble, then they want him back. But this is going on, obviously, in the book of Judges. This is going on during the period of time known as the period of the Judges, where Israel is being ruled by just certain random men of valor who God has kind of laid His Spirit on them to give them guidance and wisdom and so on and so forth. And one of the things that we see is we see this constant recurring trend where these judges come in and get the people back on track, get them focused back on God, and then they do well for a period of time, and then the judge dies, and then they go right back to worshiping Balaam and just all of this stuff. They fall right back off the wagon again. God raises up another judge, comes back, sets them straight again, and this whole cycle just continues to go on and on and on. But there was something in particular that I wanted to see, and this is kind of a controversial passage because a lot of people don't really know what to do about it. So Jephthah is getting ready to go against the children of Ammon and basically fight against them and kind of get Israel back out of bondage, so to speak. They're being oppressed by these children of Ammon. And he says in verse 30, "And Jephthah vowed a vow unto the Lord, and said, If thou shalt without fail deliver the children of Ammon into my hands, then shall it be that whatsoever cometh forth out of the doors of my house to meet me when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, shall surely be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering." So he tells God, look, if you'll deliver these people into my hand, whatever it is that first comes to meet me when I return, that I will kill and offer up as an offering. So he goes and he kills the children of Ammon and sets Israel right again. And then in verse 35 it says, "And it came to pass when he saw," or actually we back up to 34, it says, "And Jephthah came to Mizpah unto his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her he had neither son nor daughter. And it came to pass, when he saw her, that he rent his clothes, and said, Alas, my daughter, thou hast brought me very low. Thou art one of them that trouble me, for I have opened my mouth unto the Lord, and I cannot go back." And basically what happens is he said he had made a vow to the Lord that whatever it is that comes to greet me first, I'll kill and offer that up to you. And the first thing to come to greet him was his daughter, his only daughter, whom he loved. And basically he tells his daughter, look, this is what it is that I vowed. And his daughter says, you got to do what the Lord's, what it is, you have to fulfill your vow. And basically the story goes on and it talks about in verse 39, "And it came to pass at the end of 2 months that she returned unto her father, who did with her according to his vow, which he vowed, and she knew no man. And it was a custom in Israel that the daughters of Israel went yearly to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadite 4 days in a year." So basically he goes through with his vow. He gives his daughter 2 months, and then he comes through with his vow and kills his daughter. And a lot of people, particularly those in the secular view, will look at this and they're just appalled. I mean, this guy is doing human sacrifice. What's going on? He's supposed to be a man of God, and so on and so forth. One of the things that I wanted to point out is something that I've talked about in other videos, and that is the difference between prescriptive and descriptive. Understand that the Bible is describing certain events, but one of the things that I want you to notice that in this passage is in no way does God affirm what he's doing. In no way does God tell him to go through with this. In fact, I want you to see that despite the fact that God is constantly talking to Jephthah throughout this, once he gets to this part, you don't see God responding to Jephthah in any way. He is curiously absent from any of the passages. And one of the things that we can take from this is the fact that we have this tendency and this desire to want to put God in our debt. We have this this innate desire to want to control God and to make him beholden to us. So in this case here, Jephthah makes a vow and says, okay, deliver me into, or deliver the Ammonites into my hand, and I'll deliver this to you. So he's making this bargain with God. However, God had already told him that he was going to bless him, he was going to protect him, he was going to deliver these people. It wasn't as a result of God not being there for Jephthah that he felt the need to make this vow and this pact. It was because of Jephthah's lack of faith, so to speak. It was because of his inability to believe that God was going to do what he said he was going to do unless he put God in his debt, so to speak, or at least in his own mind. So he says, okay, God, if you'll deliver him into my hand, then I'll give you this. And God never asked him to do that. And as a result, we can see that circumstances lay out where it's his daughter. And once again, God never tells him to go through with this vow. In fact, one of the things that I want you to notice, if we go back to Leviticus and we go back to Exodus and stuff, in no way, shape, or form was human sacrifice ever something to even be considered or permitted. What he actually did was he made a vow to go through with something that actually violated God's law, and even when God's law presented itself, or when that opposition presented itself by Jephthah returning home and his daughter coming out, and then him starting to actually realize that, hey, this is my daughter, he's going to have to actually violate the law, God's law, in order to fulfill his vow. But instead of actually humbling himself and saying, God, I vowed a vow that I never should have made, instead he continues on with the vow, believing that he is somehow now obligated to continue with this, despite the fact that God had already told him that he was going to deliver the Ammonites into his hands. So this is something that I kind of wanted to bring up and to caution people on, is that there are passages of Scripture where God is commanding us to do certain things, and there are passages of Scripture that God is telling us that this is what it is that happened. Okay? Those commands are prescriptive. He is prescribing for us to do these things. But there are also passages that are descriptive, where he's just simply describing what it is that happened. And you need to be very careful when you're going through and you're actually reading these things, because you can actually start to develop some pretty weird doctrine and stuff if you start following in certain people's paths and patterns and stuff where God never actually said that they were supposed to do that. These are things where people stepped out on their own, oftentimes as a result of lack of faith, and did things that they weren't supposed to do. And another example would be Abraham trying to pawn his wife off twice because of lack of faith. God never said he was supposed to do that. In fact, God had told him, I'm going to protect you, don't worry about it, you'll be okay. But yet every time Abraham got into the land and he was confronted with this powerful king, he was worried that because his wife was real hot, that he was going to get killed and somebody was going to take Sarah. So he just went in there and was like, oh, well, she's my sister. And he did this to kind of save his own life. And we look at this and we're like, well, that's not very chivalrous. However, that's one of the things that actually is a real testament to the truth of the Bible, is the fact that the Bible is not trying to disguise the individuals that are within it or paint them in only a good light. It tells the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is not something that would be characteristic of, let's say, early antiquity type poetry. The Bible is a narrative. It is telling you what is going on. And sometimes the people that are doing things in the Bible are not doing things that they're commanded to do. They're doing things on their own. In this case, Jephthah trying to put God in his debt by being willing to offer something to God which God never asked him to do. So something I wanted to point out to you guys can read that passage. It goes through Judges 11, and it is what it is. So, alright, God bless.